Hey there guys, this is Ether here, and today I'm going to be presenting you with the comprehensive Master Yi guide. In this guide I hope to explain Master Yi in his entirety, and I'll be explaining to you how I play him in as many different roles. The aim of this guide is to explain and explore the character fully for if you want to be a hardcore jungler, or if you want to try a hand as AP, and there will be timestamps just below the video for if you want to fast forward or rewind to the parts that you feel are most relevant to improving your Master Yi. Keeper of the ancient art of Wuju, Master Yi is a mystical warrior from the Isle of Ionia. He descended from one of the few tribes dedicated to the preservation of Wuju, a martial art founded with the principles of absolute spiritual awareness of oneself and one's enemy. When the armies of Noxus invaded Ionia, Master Yi joined in the Ionian defense to fight the craven enemy, bringing his village honor through his unparalleled mastery of the blade. The ensuing battles ravaged the land, but no conflict inflicted as much horror as the days the armies of Noxus closed in on Yi's village. Left undefended, the village became the unfortunate test subject of the latest invention by an up-and-coming chemist known as Singed. The remains of the village that Master Yi returned to were so horrific that it remains a festering scar on Ionian history. To this day, no Ionian will ever publicly speak of what occurred. After the Noxian invasion was contained, Master Yi fell into a deep isolation. For years he trained morning to night, speaking to no one and refusing offers of consolation by fellow Ionians. The only thing stopping him from madly charging into Noxus battle lines headfirst was his pledge to keep the Wuju style alive. Even though he seethed with impatience, his rage became a tool for sharpening his practice of Wuju, developing stronger and deadlier tools for his eventual vengeance. The only thing that roused him was the news of the League's formation and Noxus's subsequent involvement with the League. Master Yi now brings his mastery of the blade to the League of Legends with unflinching purpose, to avenge his kinsfolk and end the predations of Noxus once and for all. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoyed that, just a little something different there, and now I'm looking to just get under the way. Going to be starting off by explaining a little bit about the Master Yi jungle. So, when you start out jungling as Master Yi, probably the first thing you have to do is simply look at their team. Now, obviously this is going to be something you can do in a draft pick, but not in a blind pick. In a blind pick, you're simply just going to have to make do, and if you come up against an Alistar, tough. Then you'll have to build tanky. But the main choice that you'll be having to make as a jungler is fundamentally what build you're going to use. There are two ways that I think Jungle Yi can be played properly and be actually effective, and the first I'm going to be showing in a little bit of LoL replay footage, and you're going to be seeing there I'm going to be going for a very aggressive build. I'm going to be starting with a Vampiric Scepter, and my goal is literally just going to be to farm as much as I possibly can in the jungle in the early game with my blue buff, because his Alpha Strike is an insanely powerful tool for creep wave clearing. I mean, I'll give you some of the details later, but you basically have a chance to do an AoE smite ability the more you rank it up, and that's why I rank up Alpha Strike first, because it lets you get your Wriggles Lantern and your Berserker Boots as quickly as you possibly can, and that just makes your jungle time insanely fast, and you will be looking at becoming the most farmed character in the game. And you know, Master Yi clears the jungle so quickly that, you know, your bot lane AD carry is going to be looking at you and thinking, damn, he rich. That's what I'll be showing you in the footage. Another option is to go for an early Phage. Now, Phage is an item that's seen quite commonly on ganking junglers. Very good item. It gives you a slight chance to imply a minor slow on the enemy, and it also gives you a little bit of durability. So if they're against a team that's very CC heavy, a Phage is probably a worthy investment, because well, for one thing, it's going to let you chase, let your teammates catch in quicker, but it also means that if you do get stunned, you're not going to be insta-gibbed. So if you're against an Alistar, a Scion, Blitzcrank, any of the kind of big nasty names, that's going to be probably the most basic decision you're going to have to make if you have a Master Yi. Now, when you should even pick Master Yi is probably the even bigger question for if you're in draft mode or ranked. He is not a counter to anybody per se. He is not the kind of person who you're going to look at as a Maokai jungle, a Shyvana jungle, an Olaf jungle, and think, oh, bugger, he really counters me. That's not really how he works. He can invade, sure, or he can just clear his own jungle. It's not particularly important as long as he gets his farm. It can make him susceptible to invasion, but at the same time, his ability to just traverse the jungle so quickly makes it often an incredibly risky move. If you want to consider oracles on Master Yi, it's a possibility. It's not something I usually go for, but, well, mostly because my team's... I'm sort of a lower reload bracket, but given his base move speed, I consider oracles could be fairly safe on him, because yeah, he can roam around the map, and after level 6 especially, if he does get into trouble between Highlander and Flash, you are a very slippery fish. But there are two main reasons why you would want to pick a Master Yi, or why you should avoid. The first is going to be your team. Master Yi, if you want to play him effectively, requires him to basically get so farmed that he just gets so far ahead of the enemy that if anyone comes and tries to mess with him, he's just like, hey, what's up, Wuju style, your face, and just down they go. In order to get that, he requires his blue buff. Because with the blue buff, you can get your wriggles, you can get your boots. After that, it's not as important, because you have your smite there. So what that comes down to is your mid lane. You need your mid lane to not require blue buff. So if you have, if you have an Anivia or a Swain who's locked in, don't pick Master Yi, please. I mean, yeah, it's okay, nice, they may have a slow and you think, okay, great, I can do some bursty stuff, but you're not going to get your blue buff. You will need to give it to them, because they so require it, and you're really stabbing yourself in the ass. So if you are determined to pick Master Yi, do it in a GOQ, get your mate to pick the mid, tell him to pick a Katarina, or just any AP mid, or go with someone who has mana regen runes, or anything like that. Other than that, you're just going to have to put faith in your randoms and really ask them very, very nicely, dealing with a Master Yi. Just looking at the footage now, you can see that I go in for a cheeky little gank in mid, because I've seen that they've been on low health in a previous engagement, but unfortunately they do manage to go back in time. So I just go into mid. Wuju style is fantastic for last hitting minions, just farming up a little bit. Olaf does come in, you can see him coming in from the top left, but with the move speed that you get from going back for the boots, had to do that earlier unfortunately because of the failed leash at blue. But jungle has been recovering fairly well, so as you can see, try not to shove the lane too much. Seems like an obvious thing to say, but it's very easy to get overzealous with Alpha Strike and just farm like crazy. Now, Diana is fairly good against Master Yi. She bruises a lot, she's got a very tasty little shield, and she can be tricky, and you will actually see that Diana does kill me at one point, because I do make the mistake of overestimating my damage with just the Vampiric Scepter and boots. But in terms of when you should be going shopping, you can see that straight away, gone back to the, straight back into the jungle. Now, it's a bit of a waste of a red buff, you could say. There are characters like Lee Sin who would definitely have ganked by now, but really, early on, you need the experience in gold. As for when you should make your first back to base, you should absolutely just farm as much as you possibly can until you can buy both Wriggles and your Berserker boots. Now, you don't necessarily have to buy them at the same time, it doesn't matter too much. If you do die in the jungle, that is obviously a prime time to go shopping, but if you can avoid it, do. Now, you can see I'm going back to mid lane here, I'm not entirely sure why, I think I'm just stealing wraiths or something, but Alpha Strike is a very good tool for that. Oh no, Diana just killed Katarina. But given the smite chance that your Alpha Strike has, it's very easy to just walk into the enemy wraiths, Alpha Strike, and you'll probably steal a few of them. If you do steal the big one, then you can just walk off and great. His ability to steal in that way is almost unmatched in terms of just walking in and grabbing stuff, and you will see me start to do that when I feel a bit more confident, when I know that Olaf is much weaker than I am. But early on you do have to be careful of slows. One nasty slow can catch you by surprise. But let's talk about his Wuju style steroid. Now, I did a fair amount of testing, and the Wuju style steroid is fantastic. It gives you an enormous damage burst. I mean, it's better than the free BF sword, really. However, it does have a fairly long cooldown. So what I found was the only time you really want to be using Wuju style is on these little golems, if you absolutely have to. So that's if you saw me do it very early on in the footage. I was on super low health and I basically had to do it in order to get enough lifesteal to not die. But other than that, you're going to literally only want to use it on red buff and blue buff. Because other than that, the cooldown is so long that you're reducing your AD in between creep camps. You're going to be getting there in, you know, the interim, and it's not really worth it. Now, you can see me trading a little bit up here with Jax. You will see the reduced steroid come out. You see, he goes to double strike. I just back off a little bit because I know I can't hit him. But right here, he tries to engage, and you can see just by activating Wuju style, the damage is significant. Now, that could probably have gone quite badly, I have to admit. If Jax had been a little bit stronger, if he'd been maybe sort of level 7, it could have been a different story, but it kind of comes to knowing your limits. Like, I knew I could take Jax at that point. I'd looked at his runes, he did not have enough armor, and the rest was just shred. I suppose when it comes to armor pen, that brings me on to my runes and masteries. I need to bring up a little picture, but what you're going to be looking for in a rune page is pretty much pure attack speed. I'll just bring it up on screen now. Okay, yeah, there we go. As you can see here, the runes I've gone for are pure attack speed, apart from reds, where I've gone for 7 armor pen. Now, what this does is this gives me 12 armor pen from the rune page. So as you can see here, I've gone for a 2109 build, taking all of the relevant AD, attack damage, attack speed, armor pen, blah 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 blah, all of the damage stuff, and also gone all the way down in utility to get the extra point in blue. Durability is an issue early game. You can see I've avoided all of the points in the defense tree, but fundamentally it's not really necessary. You'll be seeing later on that I will be going for an incredibly important item for Master Yi, and that's Quicksilver Sash. When you get your Quicksilver Sash is entirely up to you, and whether you even need it or not is dependent basically on whether the enemy team has exhaust. As you can see up in top lane, interrupting myself here, Gangplank obviously gets ganked by their jungler and their Diana. He doesn't stand much of a chance, but he does play incredibly well. Now, I've been rather opportunistic here. You can see Diana, you know, she dies, she takes a lot of damage. The tower does unfortunately kill her, so I missed out on the opportunity to pick up an easy double, sorry, an easy single. But I kind of hover around. Olaf, you can see, took a lot of damage as well. He gets a bit too close to the tower, and I go in. You see I pop Highlander, so I don't get worried by his axe. Just go straight in there. He does a lot of burst damage, but the double strike does take him down. But you can see clearly there, early on, Master Yi is not a very good duelist. Then again, I am only using a Vampiric Scepter and boots. Had we both been on full health, yeah, he probably wouldn't have been able to kill me. That would have been bad. I would have lost the blue buff, and that would have really set me back. So you can see straight away, I gank, I've done the lanes, and it's straight back into the jungle. The health that you get back from the minions, the larger ones, like the big golem here, you can see it's sufficient enough that you don't really lose health at all between creep camps. You just clear them that quickly. I probably could have done red there. You say I have my smite up, but I suppose I just wanted to play it safe. Olaf, at this point, he's probably not really going to want to invade. You can see he's not had a terribly good run of things. His farm is fairly low. Yeah, I go for red now. You can see down the bottom what his items have been. At this point, I was feeling very confident as Master Yi. You could see I'm pretty far ahead on. I'm the most farmed person in the game at the moment. I think the bot lane is richer. Now you can see Diana gets a little confident here. She goes in for the dive, does a fair amount of damage to Katarina, but she backs off once she sees that I'm around. At this point, I know that Diana's probably going to want to dive. I kind of run around here. You can see I'm kind of staying close to mid. Like, I do wolves, I don't go miles away, and you can I'm just kind of observing at this point. Diana goes in for the turrets, and you can see here, like, she's all about to dive, and in she goes. But I'm right there. Katarina gets a good exhaust off, that's all well and good. Now, I make a mistake here. You see, Diana has lots of items, and I don't, and I make the mistake of thinking I can take her. She does a cunning little ignite and flash away. I tried to flash to get one last hit, but it doesn't quite work out. And as you can see, I'm dead. This, however, finally lets me shop, and you can see from just the items I've bought, it's a big shop. As you can see, I've immediately upgraded to Wriggles and the Berserker's Boots, and with my 95 farm, I am so far ahead right now. These two items in conjunction, the extra attack speed, the move speed, and of course the innate smite and lifesteal and armor of Wriggles, they let you really do what you want to do. You can see I even pick up a Zeal. I have that much money at this point, and the question as to when you should get your Zeal, it's kind of open. A lot of people say that you should be getting your BF sword before Zeal. I do subscribe to that. However, if you have 1,200 gold, you might as well get the Zeal, because it can only increase your, your farming potential. The extra crit is really nice with the Wuju style. Go for the BF, but obviously there's no reason to pass up on the Zeal. I would definitely have gone for that, because your goal is to go back to base as few times as possible, really, because any time not spent farming is wasted time. You can still go in here again, and Diana gets very confident. She thinks, she beat me last time, she thinks she can beat me now, but you can see, now that I've got my Wriggles and my Zeal, my damage on her is... it's a lot at this point, and I take her down, and I get my blue buff back, which is incredibly nice. And straight away, you can see, though I'm on quite low health, the fact that I've got my Wriggles and attack speed means I can go straight into the jungle, and you can see there the Alpha Strike proc at its full power there. I'm now just kind of hovering around. I think I can get something in bot lane. Let's see what I do here. No, looks like I'm just trying to do a little bit of invasion. At this point, it's really up to the Master Yi, up to you. You need to look at the enemy team, you need to get a feel for how the game's going and decide when is a good time to start roaming, start invading. Now, for me at this point, though I'm on quite low health, I'm fairly confident. Obviously, full health Olaf is not something I want to mess with his reckless swing. Bot lane is doing fairly well. At this point, I think while Katarina's kind of in for it, at this point I just want to back off. I don't want to lose my double buff, and I just want to keep farming, keep getting money, and just begin steamrolling. You can see Katarina doing her work. Yeah, there we go. But, so yeah, it's up to you to decide when you're strong enough, when you think you can do it, and that's something you will really only get with practice. And you can see, even though I'm level 11, fairly well farmed, I am still not confident, simply because Diana, she's an incredibly beefy character, and Marcy doesn't really do well against beefy characters. You can see, like, she's diving up top, gangplank, there's a turret there, no problem. Being an opportunist here, I do go for it. I should actually mention that. Master Yi is fundamentally an opportunist, and I suppose it quite nicely ties into his storyline, really, of knowing your own strengths, knowing the strengths of your enemy. You need to know exactly when to engage, because obviously if I were engaging a full health Diana there, at the moment, she would probably pancake me, though this was before the Diana nerf. I'm not sure how she's different now. Her Crescent Strike is a little weaker, so maybe that'll change how things work, but you need to decide when to attack, and then it's when you do go in, you need to hit hard. You need to hit hard and fast, and you can see I'm just working on blue buff here. I've been keeping an eye on mid, and now is when I go in for it. You can see, like, the enemy team, obviously I wouldn't have known this, but they're desperately pinging for Janet to get back, because they know something she doesn't, and you can see I just go in here. She's on low health. I think Katarina would have picked up the kill anyway. Pop in Highlander, not much she can do, a couple of hits, and down she goes. Now, I would have probably gone for Jax, but I am pretty scared of Olaf because, well, true damage. Yeah, but I suppose that quite neatly brings us up into what a Master Yi should really be doing in team fights. Now, I suppose really a good Master Yi will be trying to avoid team fights altogether. Not so much because of the team fights themselves, but you want to force the enemy into a position where they can't really gather up. Because Master Yi he's very competent in a one-on-one situation once he gets his build rolling, especially once you get a little bit of life steal, a little bit of damage. You can see just the enemies are kind of rolling around here. But how you do that, that's up to you. You have options. You can split push. Here we go. Now this is what you do if you do get into a team fight. You do never want to engage as Master Yi. You can see the enemies, they're all burning their cooldowns. Diana do something. I just Alpha Strike in. You want to go for the weak targets, and you just want to burst them down. With Highlander up, of course, you're going to be looking at getting refreshes, keeping the speed up. See, Olaf, even with Ghost, he can't really get away from a Master Yi. And at this point, you're just running around cleaning up. And you can see, with Highlander available, because I got the previous kills, I can chase down Janet, just tag her there. I kind of juke around in between hits, trying to avoid a potential Gale, but the combination of my attack damage with Wuju style and the red buff, it's enough to take down just about anyone at this point. As you can see here, just going straight for the turret because Master Yi. That totally was the speed it's meant to happen at. But, yeah, so Master Yi, you're going to be waiting for team fights basically to kick off. You take quite a passive role. You want to hang back just out of sight. That can be in brush or just sort of anywhere not in range. And you want the enemies basically to lose their crowd control abilities. Like, Janna is probably quite a big threat to a Master Yi, because she has her ultimate, she can knock him back, you know, she has her knock-up ability, that's also a very powerful tool for disengaging a Master Yi. If he isn't using Highlander, you can see another use of Highlander, just run in, it's fine, job done. But, she's got a move, and just running away was on a cheese. But, so yeah, you can see in the fights, you want to find the priority targets. Those are going to be the people on low health, or obviously the enemy AD carry. Now, they don't have one in this team, the enemy team here, which makes my life easy, really. But you want to find that moment to engage, and you just want to blow them up, because between your steroid from Wuju and the innate build you're going to be going back here, and you can see just items straight away. I think that is an Infinity Edge. Okay, so now, at this point, I am so fed that I can just take on just about anyone. You can see I'm going in mid here, and the damage I do to Jax is just insane. I tear him to pieces with the Infinity Edge, and you can see I'm just going up for Diana as well. It's from here on in, it's just clean up. There's a nice Gangplank ultimate, and that's that. At this point, you've farmed so much. I haven't got that many kills. You can see I could be more fed, per se, but it's mostly come from opportunistic ganks from enemies turret diving, and of course minions. And you can see at this point they just pack it in, because with that much damage there's not much they can do. And there's the surrender vote. So that's a little bit of an overview as to how you want to be kind of farming as Master Yi. Nice little victory screen there. Really, most of your money doesn't come from ganks. Ganks are not the best way to be making your cash. It's just farm, 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 farm. Once you get to the stage where you've got your BF sword, that's when you can start really getting engaged in fights. Because before then, he's just not strong enough. I mean, there are characters out there who will definitely beat him in the jungle. I mean, in terms of matchups, he has quite a few negative matchups, and let's actually try and bring up something here. Now, in a draft pick, the very fundamental point is that you can see what your opposing team is picking at any given time. Now, the fact that Master Yi has so many negative matchups means that he is definitely not someone you want to be picking early on. Master Yi is best suited probably as a last pick, when you know for sure what you're going to be up against, who your match is against. Now, what I'm going to be doing now is explaining some of the mainstream junglers in relation to Master Yi. The kind of things they can do, the kind of things you want to look out for, and if you do come up against them in a blind pick, what you can do as a Master Yi to give yourself the edge, to give yourself the better chance that you need. Okay, so first up we've got Amumu. Now, Amumu's a pretty strong jungler. He's got a very fast early clear when he gets his blue, and you know, between his bandage toss and his ultimate, he's a formidable ganker. Amumu is someone, to be honest, that early on Master Yi can duel. I mean, until he gets a Randuin's or any of those really hardcore armor items, and Amumu is deceptively squishy. You know, continued pressure will be able to take him down, and with an Alpha Strike you can very easily steal camps from pretty much underneath his nose. Plus, between your base move speed, it's quite easy to dodge his bandages. Amumu is not a tough matchup for Master Yi. He's not going to be invading all that much. You can take liberties, you can invade his jungle, and you just need to play the control game. If your team can take his blue buff, that's an incredible way to control Amumu, because then he's forced to farm as much as he can. Then you can really get in there. You can take stuff from right under his nose. Amumu, I think, it's a fair matchup against Yi. I think Yi has a fairly good chance against Amumu, and you shouldn't count Yi out because they have one. Plus, if you do get your Quicksilver Sash, you can use that to negate the effects of his ultimate and really close in team fights, because that is something that often in Amumu will not be expecting. Fiddlesticks has the possibility to be incredibly difficult for Master Yi, or an absolute pushover. Typically, the only real defensive item that a Fiddlesticks will be getting is a Zhonya's, and that's really so that he can ultimate in, then just laugh at people when he turns invulnerable. In that state, given Master Yi's speed, he can very easily get out of it and then re-engage. And again, Fiddlesticks is a character that's very easily foiled by the Quicksilver Sash. You know, once you're terrified, you can just Quicksilver Sash out, and Master Yi's damage is it's such that he can easily just power through Fiddlesticks' drain. With that said, though, if Fiddlesticks does be able to, you know, if he does get his snowball in, if he does get successful ganks early game, he does get a needlessly large rod early on, you are going to be in a lot of trouble, because you simply aren't going to be able to fight him. By the time the drain has finished, and by this stage you probably won't have your Quicksilver Sash yet, you are going to be in danger. I think if you're going to be coming up against a Fiddle in a draft, you want to make sure that your team is going to be invading blue, you're going to need ward support, you're going to make sure that you've got a competent team. I would probably not advise Master Yi against Fiddlesticks in randoms because, hey, Fed Master Yi, there's going to be nothing you can do. And in typical style, you'll take the fall. Gangplank is a character who we don't really see much of in the jungle anymore. And there are several reasons for that, mostly sort of metagame and all that, but Master Yi is probably one of the better matchups for Gangplank, or Gangplank is one of the easier people for a Master Yi to deal with. A lot of his slows and the utility he gets, the damage from Grog Soaked Blade, doesn't really apply to Yi. I mean, after level 6, Yi doesn't really care about slows. He can very easily sort of move through the cannon barrage without taking too much damage. And while Gangplank does have a fair amount of damage with his parlay, unless he builds Crit Plank, which a jungler is never really going to do anyway, it's never going to be able to keep up with the Wuju style. Now, Gangplank does have quite a quick base move speed. He can keep up with Yi in the early game. His clear time, however, is significantly lower. Against a Gangplank, you can quite confidently move in and out of his jungle. If you see a Gangplank on the enemy team, I think Master Yi is an incredibly strong pick. Of course, that's subject to the rest of the team, but Master Yi, I would say, is a very solid matchup. Now, to some, Jarvan has become the quintessential average jungler. He has a combination of decent clear time, survivability, etc. in the jungle, but also a very competent ganker, and he transitions very well into the mid and late game. He's just a really good all-round champion. Now, against Jarvan, Master Yi is fairly average. I mean, Jarvan does have his weak points in the jungle. If you do get your mid lane, or if you yourself invest in ward coverage at the enemy buffs, you can occasionally catch Jarvan, you know, with his trousers down. And it's in those cases that an opportunistic Master Yi may be able to infiltrate and pick up not only the buff, but also a Jarvan as well. To play against Jarvan requires fairly candid play. I mean, a Jarvan's going to be ganking at level 2 fairly early on. He's going to be really exerting himself around the map, and that's not something you're going to be able to do. I wouldn't count Master Yi out against a Jarvan. There are things you can do. If a Jarvan ganks, you can notice this. You can either go to help out, sort of try and burst someone down, do your bit, or move into his jungle. You know, steal buffs from under his nose, just take everything you can. Master Yi's not especially strong. Between Jarvan's Crater and his escape tools, he does have a lot of ways of disengaging or engaging. Master Yi can keep up. I mean, if you get a Phage, it's particularly easy, but correct use of Alpha Strike, you can sometimes negate his wall or chase him if he goes through something else. It could go either way. Master Yi can do incredibly well. I think you would be wise to pick a Master Yi over perhaps a Shyvana or a Lee Sin. Other than that, you just have to keep up the invades, and I do well. Now, Lee Sin is one of Master Yi's worst matchups. The cripple effect of his slow will dramatically decrease Master Yi's attack speed, and this obviously has a phenomenal effect on his damage, since right-clicking it's what kills people for you. He also gets armor benefits from Safeguard. His Resonating Strike is a great execute, and of course when you're in the air, there's not a great deal you can do, so his Dragon's Rage can really wreak havoc. He's one of the people who Master Yi early on will lose to in duels. There's no real two ways of putting it. Unless you get really lucky with a double strike, Lee Sin will probably be beating you. His clear time, however, by comparison, is quite slow, though his mobility is very high. He's going to be ganking a lot more than you. It's not really something you can do much about. Master Yi is a weak pick against Lee Sin, I would think. You're also quite open yourself to being invaded when you're trying to take your buffs. You can take them as quickly as you like, but a Resonating Strike over the wall will give sight and allow him to smite steal. He's not as strong late game, that's certainly true, but his ability to move around in team fights means that if you try to close in on the carry, there is a very high chance that a Lee Sin will be able to safeguard in, kick you away, and at that point you're really on the back legs because you no longer have your element of surprise and the things that you really need to do to be your Master Yi. As said, I would definitely not pick a Master Yi against a Lee Sin. you're more likely to go bad. I'm sure it can work. I'm sure it's doable. I mean, if you invade Lee Sin a lot, if you really take everything he has, if you deny him that red buff in particular, then that it can go in your favour. The other side as well is that Lee Sin, they will tend to leave they won't pay as much attention to their blue because they have their own energy source. It's not something they need to do. And what that means is that if you see the enemy mid go towards their blue buff into their own jungle, it pretty much only means one of two things, and that can be either they're going to bot lane for the gank, in which case you should be calling the SS anyway, or they're going to take their blue buff. Now, if you're in the area for that, and as long as you have a good idea of timings, you can figure it out. It actually opens an opportunity for you to get in there, because Alpha Strike is an incredibly powerful stealing tool by itself. If your mid lane is aware of this, then you can set yourself up for a pretty powerful mid to late game. So he's not that dreadful, just he is not a good matchup. Lee Sin will probably kick the 7 shades of crap out of him, so I would avoid Master Yi in this case. Maokai presents a unique challenge for Master Yi. His jungle time requires a lot of setup, it's fairly slow. His ganks are very powerful, however. Now, remember that Highlander can negate slow effects, so you don't have to worry about his arcane smash. Fighting in his ultimate is not so much of a problem for Master Yi once you have sufficient lifesteal, and you can also perform some neat little stunts for when he's trying to root you. Highlander used with Flash, that can result in bringing a Maokai wildly out of position during the kind of ganking, laning phase, and as well, sort of combined with the slow jungle time, you can do really nice invading against him. He's going to be very reluctant to take his golems because, you know, you get less for your saplings, so you can take those quite easily. Red buff, again, something a Maokai often won't go for, so you can invade. There's a lot of variety there. He will of course be ganking far more than you. He may even try to invade, though I would advise fighting a Maokai. Always fight a Maokai if you're a Master Yi, because early on, combined with your attack speed, your armor penetration, well, Maokai's probably not going to have all that much armor. You will probably be able to beat him down. He's also very slow. His mobility's not great. You can absolutely run rings around him. I think while a Maokai will be able to gank a lot more, I think he is probably a better jungler per se, which is probably why you see him in more tournaments and stuff. I think that you can stand a very good chance as Master Yi. As long as your lanes don't feed the crap out of him and he gets a Glacial Shroud really early on, and any of that kind of stuff, I think Master Yi can be in a fairly good position. Of course, as with all things, it's situational. For a Master Yi in the jungle, a Malphite jungle is a lot less scary than a Malphite in top lane. A Malphite in top lane becomes this rock that you won't be able to gank, you won't be able to move, and just screw that. In the jungle, however, Malphite relies a lot on his farm. He's not a terribly strong ganker. He can, but you know, his Q uses a large amount of mana. It's not very good for clearing waves. He's mostly going to be going for the armor buff and the ground slam. This means that Master Yi, he has fairly good potential for invasion in particular. You actually have a much more map control. You can, for instance, focus a bit on Dragon. You can actually gank yourself a bit without fear of repercussions. A Malphite in the jungle, a Master Yi has a fairly good chance against. As long as you keep split pushing, you do all the things that make you Master Yi, you get your farm, you get your really early advantage, then you're going to stand yourself in rather good stead. Because while a Malphite is going to build armor anyway, if a Malphite sees a fed Master Yi, he's going to be like, oh, happy days, I'll just build more armor. This can in turn give your AP mid a lot more propensity to burst him down. I think a Master Yi can do fairly well against a Malphite, as long as the game doesn't go on for 40 or 50 minutes. Because when you get to that point, a Malphite's probably just going to hold on to his ground slam and his ultimate and wait for you to pop up. Because at that point of the game, for a Malphite, you're just free gold. I've always found that Nocturne is a very powerful matchup against Master Yi. Master Yi, of course, based a lot around his right click. Nocturne is as well, but Nocturne has an innate attack damage steroid based on him hitting his Q, which, while not as strong as Wuju style, is about as strong as Wuju style's passive effect. Now, what this effectively means is that with Nocturne's lifesteal, between that, the attack speed boost he gets through his shield if he interrupts your Alpha Strike, and with his Sphere, a Nocturne is very powerful against a Master Yi. He will actually often win, especially in the early mid-game, just on the right click, with the little crowd control that he gets, his ability to chase, because even with your Highlander, Until you hit the super late game and you've got Phantom Dancers and Boots and you're just really happy as Larry, a Nocturne will be able to keep up with you long enough to keep the fear tethered. Now, what this means practically is that a Nocturne is going to be able to invade your jungle. He's very happy to do that. He can take raids incredibly quickly, he can sustain himself well, and you're not going to be able to push him out, because the likelihood is that if you try to push him out, he'll just kill you. Now, you can say that your mid lane may help out, and that's certainly true, so maybe it could be argued that in a pre-made you may stand a better chance. But combined with the fact of just how strong he is in the jungle, his ability to duel Master Yi head-to-head, head-to-head, and just these combinations of factors, plus his ability to teamfight late game, his ability to engage, his ability to bruise, or to assassinate, it just makes Nocturne so strong against Master Yi. And, while you can try and split push, you can do all these cheese tactics, that Master Yi is particularly good at and, infamous for, all it takes is one paranoia, and you are screwed. I mean, a typical Master Yi build, if you build Bruisery, Nocturne's going to be able to sustain himself through you, and he's going to be able to keep himself alive, and if you build Glass Cannon, he'll be able to kill you just while you're feared. So, I would really not advise Master Yi if you come up against a Nocturne. That's just my 2 cents. Now, Olaf is someone that Master Yi can perform exceptionally against, but can also crash and burn. Olaf's burst damage he gets from activating Reckless Swing, Vicious Strikes and Undertow at the same time give him a lot of early game damage as a duelist. That combined with his passive. Now, in a right-click contest, Master Yi will be in a lot of trouble in the early game. However, Olaf's ganks are not particularly strong. His ganks largely revolve around him landing his axe. He's sort of like Mundo in that respect. Mundo being a great a great thing for Yi to come up against. So I think Master Yi can be incredibly strong against an Olaf. You don't really see Olaf around anymore. It's a bit of a shame. He's quite a fun little Viking, but I think Master Yi can do very well. You're very free to invade. You can easily maneuver. Olaf tends to be quite predictable. You can defend your own jungle quite easily. Olaf probably will be able to clear the jungle early on a little bit quicker than Yi, but once you get your blue buff, especially the second blue buff when you got your wriggles as well, you'll be able to just overtake him so quickly and just deny him that farm that he kind of needs, because an Olaf can't really... He's similar to Master Yi in that he can't really rely on his ganks, and that gives you a level of assurance, because if you just protect your jungle and Olaf does not get his ganks, you will be able to gain experience simply quicker than him. And as the longer the game goes on, the larger the gap will be, and the stronger you will get. I think as long as you play, you can actually play fairly defensively against an Olaf, and win simply through that way, through denial. You have like the armor penetration of his ultimate to worry about, but frankly, even an Olaf with Ghost, as we saw in the footage earlier, a Master Yi can so easily just catch up and keep up and just beat him down. I think a Master Yi is a very strong pick against an Olaf, and if you see him as the enemy, and you have no other reason not to, I think Master Yi is an incredibly good pick. I hate Shyvana. When Shyvana first came out, I pretty much saw her as a Master Yi, but that fits the metagame. She has a lot of similarities: her ability to clear the jungle very quickly, her propensity to invade the enemy jungle, her fact that her ganks aren't especially strong, and generally being a right-click who tears you to pieces. There are a lot of similarities that I drew between her and Master Yi. That combined with the lack of crowd control, that there are overlapping playstyles. That, of course, is the fact that she doesn't require mana. That's an incredible benefit in her favour. And she's also very tanky just by herself. The passive effect of her ultimate gives her a huge amount of armor and magic resist. She's just sort of a tanky Master Yi, really. And she's an interesting pick. I mean, her and a Master Yi, it's almost like a mirror match. You're both going to be aiming to do the same thing. The big benefit for her, of course, is that she can give her AP mid the blue buff. Whether you invade or not is just going to depend simply on who clears the jungle quickest. Against a Shyvana, it's completely... It could go literally either way. I mean, she can invade you, you can invade her. In fact, it's happened to me once or twice where a Shyvana has invaded my jungle at the same time I've invaded hers. If for no other reason, I would suggest taking Master Yi against a Shyvana just for the fun of it. Because it is incredibly fun having two of these champions running around very fast, just generally being kind of insane. So yeah, I think Master Yi is incredibly strong against Shyvana, as long as the game goes on, as long as you can get the all-important farm. The other side as well is that Shyvana's lack of ability to control the Master Yi means, you know, with her lack of stuns and all that kind of stuff, means that when it comes to the super late game, you've got your Bloodthirsters, potentially your Last Whispers, and you can't hit the max build. You can actually hit her simply to heal yourself back. The one thing you have to be incredibly careful of is not to let Shyvana get ahead of you to such a state where she is capable of dueling you. Because once you get to that state where Shyvana's too dangerous for you to fight, that's when you're in real trouble, because fighting her is what you're going to want to do. You're going to absolutely want to bully Shyvana around, because if you let Shyvana have control of the jungle, she's going to do what you'd do if you had control of the jungle, which is to just farm and get fed, be crazy, and just bruise stuff. Otherwise, yeah, I'd say certainly pick Master Yi. I think he's incredibly strong. I think of all the characters that a Master Yi jungle can come up against in the enemy jungle, Warwick is probably his most comfortable enemy. Warwick's lack of any kind of crowd control or even slows, apart from his ultimate, just make him so weak against the Master Yi. He relies a lot on the sustain of his passive rather than armor, at least in the early game, and this allows you to actually really deal him early game. If you get Wuju and double strike, you're going to absolutely rip him apart. He's not terribly quick. You can invade him very easily. He doesn't take his buffs particularly quickly. You can steal those quite easily. His movements through the jungle are fairly predictable. You know he's just going to farm until level 6. You know you can invade quite easily then. He's not going to be too quick. You can keep up. There's just a huge amount of things that make Master Yi strong against a Warwick. Even in the later game, when he's kind of tanky and he's got his ultimate, just Quicksilver Sash can remove that from you, and you can then very easily engage and pretty much just completely ignore him. That just by itself, the fact that also he's going to be having to ultimate you instead of your AD carry or your AP, it makes Master Yi incredibly strong against a Warwick. And of course, if he's fairly nearby, he's got his blood scent, it gives you a fair amount of warning. I would, if you see a Warwick, I would really strongly recommend Master Yi, actually. You present no real options for him to invade you. You can duel him very easily. Even in the late game, you know, Frozen Heart is the most dangerous thing he can really get against you. I think you can be very confident as a Master Yi against him, actually. For the love of God, don't pick Master Yi if you see this guy on the enemy team. If he's a Phoenix jungler, he's going to be able to clear his jungle sufficiently quickly that you're not going to be able to invade. But he's also going to be incredibly tough with the armor he's likely to root into, or with his turtle stance. His bear stance is going to negate your Highlander, and you know, you'll meditate if you're crazy enough to use that. There is so much about Udyr. His ability to bruise, his ability to survive damage, his ability to deal damage at the same time, all make him so strong against a Master Yi. Plus Randuin's is a particularly popular item with him, which will just screw you up if you even try to hurt him. And Udyr will be able to not only duel you in the jungle, he'll also be able to quite confidently invade you. While you can clear quickly with Alpha Strike, his ability to traverse the map and be unpredictable through use of Bear Stance make him a really tough thing for a Master Yi to deal with. There is no real point in the game where a Master Yi will be able to duel an Udyr. Even if you do get, you know, the sweet spot mid-game, you get your farm somehow, you get your Infinity Edge, your Phantom Dancer, blah 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 blah, all he has to do is hit you once with Bear Stance and then walk off. He's likely to get a Warden's Mail if you do even get to that stage. And Udyr is just so incredibly strong against Master Yi. For the love of God, don't pick him, please. He will somehow get an extra ability and end up with Wuju stance, where he's wearing Master Yi's hat as a head, you know, whatever, or that kind of crazy Udyr crap that he does for all the other stances. Don't do it, please! So this more or less concludes the jungling section of the Master Yi guide. I hope it's been useful to you. I know I haven't included the sort of champion spotlight style explanation of all of the abilities, but this has largely been going under the assumption that people have at least played some Master Yi. You have a feel for the movement of the character and just generally how to play. So next up I'm going to be explaining a little bit about a few different ways of playing Master Yi, different things you can bring to the Rift or to other games, and I'm going to start off with my favourite, AP Yi. Now AP Yi is something of an all-in character. There's a lot of misconceptions about him. Not many people seem to understand how Highlander works. And the main focus of an APE is that rather than focusing on your right click, your ability to open tins and do useful stuff, you're focusing on your Alpha Strike, which is effectively a rather unique AoE ability in the way it works. It's somewhat similar to Wukong's Nimbus Strike, if any of you have used that. And the way that he fundamentally deals damage is that while Alpha Strike itself has a very high AP ratio, it does a lot of damage to the targets it hits, it's got a fairly long cooldown. So the key to a successful Master Yi revolves around using what's called the reset, which is where if you get a kill with your Highlander active, all of your skills are immediately reset. Now what this allows you to do is chain link Alpha Strikes together. If you kill one target, you get the reset, you can then kill another, and given the splash damage of your Alpha Strike, you're then able to basically tear apart entire teams. Now, a common misconception is that an APE is weak in the late game for this reason. However, what I've always found is that it's exactly for this reason that APE is, spectacularly strong. Combined with his ability to team fight, I mean, no AP character would be in the thick of it anyway, so saying he's squishy is kind of irrelevant. You also have the fact that he's an incredibly strong laner. He can help with jungle invades. He does have a sort of degree of assertion over the map in terms of map control. He can gank very effectively, and if you combine it with a Lich Bane, he's not actually that much countered by a Banshee Veil. I think the lack of general understanding is one of the reasons why he's so underplayed. I think it's one of the great secrets of the league, and it's unfortunate as well that this lack of information is also why you see so many appalling APEs out there. I mean, if you do a solo queue and you get a Master Yi who insta-locks and says, "I'm AP mid," you could bet money comfortably that he's going to absolutely fail, and I've always found that very disappointing. So hopefully with this guide I'll be explaining a little bit about APE, some of the nuances of the character, how you should be building him, sort of tactics, tips and tricks you can do in the laning phase, because frankly he's a force to be reckoned with. He's just one not many people know about yet. Okay, so getting underway here with some footage from one of my APE games in Summoner's Rift, and first thing that people are going to notice probably is that I've started with Doran's Ring. Now, for most... Oh, got a bit of jungle invasion going on here, sorry for the fast forward. Nothing particularly happens, don't worry, they back off. But yeah, back to the point. Doran's Ring. For many AP mids, starting with the Doran's Ring is seen as a horribly noobish move. And rightly so. You open yourself up to harass, you have no sustain, you got the mana regen, but frankly you shouldn't need it anyway. Unfortunately, Master Yi is someone who does very much need the mana sustain from Doran's Ring. The ring allows him to sustain himself with his Meditate, which is an extremely powerful tool. It has almost 1-to-1 AP ratio scaling, so the healing is enormous, and while meditating he also gains a truly massive amount of armor and magic resist. I mean, it's something I'll talk about a little later, and it's something, a mistake people often make in thinking that Ignite will stop Master Yi's Meditate. And while it may remove the healing effect to an extent, it will remove it by half, he's still going to get a phenomenal amount of healing from it, and he's still also going to be having his ridiculous amount of magic resistant armor. So for that reason, the Meditate sustain, just the power of it, I think Doran's Ring is a fantastic opening for Master Yi, and it also lets him pressure more powerfully with Alpha Strike, as you can see here, occasionally hitting Nunu with this. And of course the inherent smite ability allows for easy farm. You can see also the passive move speed there, helping out with a Gangplank trying to invade. As for build, you basically want to be building Glass Cannon AP, because this is going to allow you to do your huge amounts of damage and also make you tankier with Meditate. And we're actually going to get a nice little demonstration of the damage you can get with Alpha Strike when combined with Ignite right here. You see Gangplank does something it shouldn't as Rengar comes in. Meditate just to tank the damage. I flash over the wall, catch up with Alpha Strike, and the Ignite combined with the double strike picks up the kill. Another interesting point to notice, especially in the early game with Master Yi, is not to neglect your melee attacks. You can see sometimes with some of these trades with Nunu, I include a few melee attacks in just to hit him, bully him around a bit, because I know that he's just not a character that can really interrupt my Meditate. And I think APE is actually one of the few things which can beat down a Nunu in lane. But coming back to build, one of the most important items you can get as a Master Yi, for me, is Deathfire Grasp. Now, Deathfire Grasp is an on-use item, and what it effectively does is it's a percentage base of the target's current health. Now, the fact that its current health is a very important thing. It means that lower targets' health are going to take less damage from it, but targets that are near the full amount of their health are going to take huge amounts. Now, if you're also building huge amounts of AP, and a max build APE should be at roughly 600 AP, your Deathfire Grasp is going to be knocking off over half of their health, pretty much, assuming they don't have magic resist. That, combined with your Alpha Strike with that much AP and a Lich Bane, you are looking at very literally one-shotting people. Now, target selection is always going to be very important, and in some of the video montages I'll be showing later on, you'll be able to see that specifically that I absolutely beeline for the enemy carries. And then the sort of extra damage that's just done because of the Alpha Strike naturally is usually sufficient for me to then clear off, and typically that is how Master Yi pentakills occur, and I do actually have one of those in footage for you, which I'll be showing a little later on. Back to the APE himself, you can see just from the footage we've had here, I've been pushing the lane quite comfortably. They have a Gangplank jungle who, while he has the healing reduction from Rock Soak Blade, it's not enough for me to be worried about. And for that reason, I've happily just gone back. I've got my Cage's Lucky Pick, and I'm now heading back to mid now. AP Yi has similarities to AD Yi, to be honest. I mean, in both cases, you have to be very careful with your engages. You don't pick fights against people with huge amounts of crowd control. AP Yi can probably be a bit more bullish, and they both require a huge amount of farm. Now, you can see here, the Alpha Strike, both with the passive smite, but just the damage by itself is clearing minions out very nicely. And for that reason, you probably want a pre-made jungler who's just going to let you take the blue buffs, because after you've got the second one, you can just Alpha Strike like this. It's very easy to push the lane, and you can see some of the ways I've been harassing Nunu. Actually, we have a Rengar coming in here for a gank, and you'll be able to see here, Nunu thinks he's kind of safe, but he underestimates the damage of Alpha Strike. A few melee hits in there. Again, if I backed out, we would not have got this kill. Just melee hitting in there, getting the Nunu down, and then ultimately it's Rengar's burst that finishes him off. But, yeah, so coming back to the Alpha Strike, it is worth noticing that the Alpha Strike will always hit 4 targets, and that you will always finish at the position of your primary target. You can see here with the Gangplank, I don't Alpha Strike to him, I Alpha Strike to the Wraith. And what that means is that while my Alpha Strike will hit him, I do not finish right on top of him, I finish where the Wraith was. And what this means is that if you have an enemy who's standing a fair way behind the minions, you can quite comfortably Alpha Strike the minions, and your Alpha Strike will bounce to the enemy champion. It's luck-based for the most part, unless someone can tell me otherwise. But it largely works like that, and you can often get a lot of, frankly, quite lucky and cheeky little kills on people who otherwise thought they were safe through that. And particularly when minions are coming into the lane, when they're all in a neat line, you can often work around that. You can see there's some action kicking off in bot lane. So I get a cheeky Alpha Strike there onto Varus. You see that places me very far away from the others. Now, unfortunately, Shen ultimates, but again, Ignite picks up the kill. And the choice of summoner spells I've gone for, it's something you don't often see in APEs. I mean, a lot of APEs I see choose Cleanse, because they think that Cleanse removing the Ignite effect is going to somehow help them. But we can see it just from the footage that I've gained here. Ignite has picked up, I wouldn't have got the kill on Gangplank for the first blood without it, and that kill on Varus there, again, that used Ignite. Flash, again, incredibly important for initiating into team fights, to catching people, and all this kind of stuff. So I think that Flash and Ignite are pretty much non-negotiable. I mean, even in proving grounds, you'll see later on, I don't go for Barrier, I don't go for Clarity or Heal, because none of them are necessary, and fundamentally as APE, you want to be getting kills. I mean, you wouldn't be picking APE if you didn't want to just carry the crap out of a game. Now, one of the things about APE, when it comes to actually just putting footage together like this, is almost the whole of APE could be summarized into 3 things: getting blue buff, Alpha Striking minions, and meditating to tank damage or to just sustain yourself in lane. I mean, again, we can see here, happily meditating through this gank. Nunu ultimate, nah, don't care, I've got meditate up. Unfortunately, I do run out of mana at this point, so I can't then Alpha Strike to pick up the kill. I'm forced to basic attack Nunu down, and what happens is a little chase with Gangplank. Being out of mana, I'm left more or less helpless, and I am forced to flash out of his ultimate. again, without Flash I would have died there. But that little thing there just demonstrated sort of the importance of a blue buff for Master Yi, really. Because obviously if I'd had a blue buff there, I would have been able to Alpha Strike, get kills, I would have been able to meditate again. It's incredibly important. But one of the most important things... Sorry, no, not one of the most important things, what am I talking about? When putting together footage like this for Master Yi, you can really boil down the character into 3 very simple things, and that's meditating to get through damage, Alpha Striking to farm minions and get really fed, and of course for initiating team fights, and blue buff. And that more or less is your entire life in Summoner's Rift. For a more adrenaline-pumping, more action-filled, more fun exploration into Master Yi, Proving Grounds is probably the way to go, but it's also fantastic practice. If you want to play Master Yi as an AP in your ranked games or whatever, if you feel comfortable enough to do that, I know I certainly do, then Proving Grounds is a fantastic way to get the hang of it. It's really good practice, of course, it's just custom games, it doesn't really show on the match history or anything. And aside from anything else, it's quite nice for an ego boost, really. I mean, in the footage just coming up, I will show you how to correctly chain Alpha Strikes together, as well as meditates to, frankly, troll the crap out of the enemy team. In a good way. Now, what we have here is the actual footage for the AP Yi pentakill, and we're going to see here that a team fight is going to erupt underneath our turret. The enemy Sona gets caught by ours as she tries to ultimate our team, and you can see an Alpha Strike into her picks up the first kill. Now with Highlander up, that allows me to refresh, and looking at the enemy team I see Gangplank is low. I Alpha Strike into him again, and I reduce him to dangerously low health. A melee attack picks up Varus, then a double strike on Gangplank gets me the triple kill. An Alpha Strike up to Lux then brings her to dangerously low health, and I finish her off with basic attack. The enemy Master Yi then comes in to ruin my fun, and I finish him off with a final Alpha Strike to pick up the pentakill. It's in this way that AP Yi can bring immense power to team fights, but he can also bring a lot of durability, as we'll see later on. So as we're going to see here, correct use of Meditate combined with Highlander resets allow for a huge amount of durability. As you can see here, as Ezreal, Sona and Kog'Maw try to kill me, I use Meditate to tank all of their damage. As Ahri tries to engage, I then engage onto Morgana to pick up a kill with Alpha Strike. With the refresh of Highlander, I Alpha Strike back to Sona and begin to attack her with basic attacks. As she flashes back into her base, I keep up with Highlander and then finish her off with one more Alpha Strike as she tries to ultimate me. Juking back, I pick up the Health Shrine so that they can't, and then run into the enemy base to avoid unnecessary tower blasts. A Meditate allows me to tank Nidalee and Ezreal's damage combined, and I run further into the base to give myself more room to maneuver. Seeing Kog'Maw in low health, I pop Highlander and Alpha Strike back in to pick up the kill. Now, you can't tank true damage, so I just heal it all back with a Meditate. Seeing Ezreal, Alpha Strike to him, and then Alpha Strike back with the refresh to avoid taking another tower blast. Tanking Nidalee with Meditate, I then survive for much longer, use Highlander for extra move speed, and then run to safety. As we can see here, Master Yi can quite comfortably run into the enemy base, tank everything, and then just run out unscathed. Much to the amusement of my teammates. As far as build goes, an APE is only really going to need 3 items, and that's Deathfire Grasp, Rabadon's Death Cap, and Lichbane. The Deathfire Grasp allows you to have a huge amount of extra burst, and the cooldown reduction is absolutely fantastic. The Rabadon's Death Cap gives you a huge amount of AP that also adds up with your other AP items to increase the healing you get from Meditate, and of course increase the all-important damage of your Alpha Strike. That will also increase the damage of Lichbane, which will do, note, physical damage, so even if they are building magic resist, you will still be able to do a big hit with that thing. And that also applies to your Wuju style, which just gives you something else to just put a bit more kick into your attacks. For Proving Grounds and Dominion, you're probably going to want to invest in a Chalice of Harmony quite early on, and that will then be built into an Athene's Unholy Grail, simply because the mana refresh is absolutely vital. But in Summoner's Rift, it's not really necessary. You do have the blue buff, you don't really need the extra cooldown, and frankly the magic resist isn't necessary at all because you have Meditate. However, to flesh out the build, it is usually advisable to have a Void Staff in there, and Azoni's Hourglass can also really help out for extra troll power, because sometimes when your Meditate is just up, and you're not invincible enough, it's nice to have just a little something extra. You can also see at the bottom there what I do for runes and masteries. It's pretty straightforward really. The masteries are just standard caster masteries, 21, 0, 9, etc, etc, points in blue buff, blah 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 blah. As for runes, I've got a complete AP rune page, but I've gone for Magic Pen Reds because extra AP makes you more of an AP Yi, so why not? Now, it would be at this point where I'd sort of replicate what I did for the Jungle Guide and present you with a number of the sort of mainstream AP champions, the kind of people you frequently see in ranks and normals, the kind of people who you'd be most likely to come up against as an APE mid. But there's no real point, because trying to discuss what your tactic is to counter things is just going to be me repeating myself over and over again, because you can summarise it very simply as Alpha Strike Meditate. I mean, Swain, you just Alpha Strike Meditate, Cassiopeia, Alpha Strike Meditate, Cassidon, Alpha Strike Meditate, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, you're just going to be doing that to everyone, and fundamentally, I can't think of a single AP mid that has a really solid, concrete answer to it. Fiddlesticks is pretty good. The fact that he's got the silence that has the potential to repeat itself, and the fact that he has a drain, both of which serve as interrupts for Meditate, those are both pretty good. But there's still nothing there that's going to stop you from just walking back to your tower to heal yourself. It's not a proper counter. Anyway, with the APE mid stuff done, I'd like to introduce you now to something a little bit different. Please welcome, Support Yi! Support Yi is a deceptively strong support character, though one that is sadly seldom seen in the Rift, since he's usually hugging Maokai fans and Twisted Treeline, and no one ever looks there because it sucks. I do not have a build per se for Support Yi because property is theft, but I aim to max out my Pilates and Herbal Medicine first, stopping off at level 6 to take a point in making love, not war. Having completed my Cosmic Space Odyssey to level 6, government agents come in to try and reduce my student grant, and immediately I make a run for my tower, but unfortunately they give chase and I start taking damage. Using my peace and love, however, I begin to regenerate health and call on my hippie friends. As they begin to come to help me out, we begin to chase the government agents back. A team fight breaks out, but eventually they're forced to retreat because of human rights law. As we give chase, I resurrect more of my friends from prison and continue to chase them out of our forest. Thus concludes our comprehensive Master Yi guide. I hope you all enjoyed it. It would mean a lot if you could rate, comment, subscribe, as the saying goes, you can't rate anymore. And yeah, I hope you really enjoyed it. I'm sure there are other Master Yi builds out there, different ways to build him. I was tempted to do a Warmogster Yi as part of this as well, which is simply being as big as you can possibly be, whatever that may mean. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. I may do other guides like this in the future if this one gets a good enough response, and catch you around.